Charlie Kirk, a father to two, husband and political activist who rose to fame hosting gracious, charitable, and open debate with ideological opponents, has been murdered, aged 31. As a 20-year-old who has no political affiliation and is just trying to work out how the world works, a few things have become clear to me. One of them being the absolute necessity to not let this scare us away from the battle of ideas we must engage with in order to root out the worst ideas in our society. And that battle has to come from us, the next generation. A third of American students think violence is acceptable to stop speech. This is shared on both sides of the political spectrum, and it has to be changed. Freedom of speech on campus has been dead for years, and today we saw someone actually pull the trigger. The only reason to exclude someone else's opinion is if you're too weak to contend with it. Good ideas can be onboarded and bad ones exposed, but growing up immersed in the culture wars, it really feels like the concept of civil disagreement is further away than ever. I still remember some of the first videos I watched being that of Steven Crowder's Change My Mind format, and it was wonderful to watch. There was something so satisfying about seeing people have their emotional rug pulled from under their feet and witness their own logical inconsistencies collapse in front of them. But it was addictive. And since then, I've only seen people more and more desperate to create gotcha moments. With the TikTokification of discourse, arguments grow ever more shallow and full of slogans. Proper, open, public debate is the antidote to this chaos. The shallow sloganization of politics is an active blockade and one we must smash through to be able to debate in any capacity. These slogans that we so conveniently lean on, facts don't care about your feelings, go woke, go broke, my body, my choice, Black Lives Matter, from the river to the sea, escape the matrix, #MeToo, stop the boats, all rely on ideas that were formed decades ago, if not centuries. Yet the actual ideas are forgotten, and only the disparate remnants in slogan form are left. We play with ideas shaped by fire without truly grappling with the philosophical undertones and partial truths that exist in all of them. Then we act surprised when someone's so offended by what we have to say. A lot of the time, it is because they're a pussy and can't handle confrontation. But a lot of the time, it's also because we're operating in a paradigm of slogans rather than extended, arduous, empathetic conversation. Remembering that ultimately the vast, vast, vast majority of us are working towards the same thing. We're just disagreeing on how to get there. If I can guess the remainder of your political beliefs from a couple of them, you're not thinking, you're emoting. You've joined a tribe and your emotion has been wrapped up in slogans and ideology. Stop pretending that the complexities of politics have been neatly ran through a moral equation that just so happens to align with everything a single political institution shoves down your throat. Realization of the scale of this cognitive dissonance is currently shielded by the ever-present mental gymnastics we use to map on logic to our emotions after the fact. In a world where 10% of Twitter users make up 92% of the noise, we bond over a mutual hatred of outgroups rather than a shared vision for humanity, playing on the negativity bias that we all possess. We shoot people we're not smart enough to argue with, using the guns we're vocally against. We condemn the death penalty, except for those we disagree with. We beg for freedom of speech until someone uses it to our distaste. But the reality is, when we go outside and touch grass, we don't feel the civil unrest we so speak about, do we? There's been a genuine decline in safety on Western streets, but instead of interacting with the solutions, we retreat inside to our devices to get our fix of cheap dopamine. And it makes sense. Before, if we weren't in on the gossip of the tribe, we risked missing out on crucial information. Now, we miss out on crucial information because we're in on the gossip of the tribe. People bind themselves into political teams that share moral narratives. Once they accept a particular narrative, they become blind to alternative moral worlds. Our moral thinking is much more like a politician searching for votes than a scientist searching for truth. And identity politics has always had the potential to go in this more unhinged direction. It's less based on ideas than on the self and membership of this group. The flip side of accentuating your vulnerability is the tendency to lash out. And now we're seeing that in real time. The difference, though, between a man in the middle of speaking and being shot in the throat more than anything else is that between words and violence. First, we were told words are violence, then that silence is violence. And now we need to see that violence is violence. And it's unacceptable because when people are told that words are violence, it becomes justified to act with actual violence in return. And that is a Pandora's box you and I need to work to close. Without sounding too extreme and playing into the fear-mongering that's currently going on, we do have two choices now: martyrdom or suicide. We speak about the complacent suicide taking hold of the West, and now We ourselves must practice martyrdom every day in our own tiny ways, which pale in comparison to the freedom of speech Charlie Kirk died for. Whether it's speaking up for what we believe in on campus or saying what we really think to our friends, we all at times lose what we feel isn't just to lose. But I promise you, it'll be worth it sooner than you think. We need to hold the line, and we need courage. And courage is almost a contradiction in terms. It means a strong desire to live, taking the form of a readiness to die. And as a generation of nihilists, we need to regain that desire, or at very least, look at the hell on earth we must pull ourselves away from. And with this comes the hardest part. The people who lead this change can't be those that agree with Charlie. It has to be the people that disagree with him. And when the time comes, which it inevitably will, the same grace must be shown for those who so disgustingly celebrated his death. This is the only way we build. Slowly but surely, brick by brick. If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. And who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Moving forward, we can expect colleges and universities to place even greater emphasis on security ahead of controversial speakers arriving on campus. But administrators can't pass security costs along to speakers or use security concerns as pretext to cancel a speaker's appearance. They have a moral and legal obligation to redouble their efforts to protect free speech. Rewarding threats of violence by taxing speech or silencing speakers will only invite more threats and more violence. It's when we let our open discourse be taken away that evil ideas metastasize. With the punishment of truth comes lies to save face, toxic empathy to appease those we respect, and lower-grade thinking with an inability to problem solve. And I've seen it firsthand in authoritarian countries that I've been to and lived in. The infrastructure and creations are shit, because when confronted with a problem, they sweep it under the rug only for it to molest the entire creation down the line. Something I find fascinating following the murder of Charlie Kirk is looking at the way both sides of the political spectrum clutch at different straws and weaponize discourse in favor of their own ideas. The left seems generally to run emotion heavy, with platforms like Blue Sky, appropriately named, created to avoid discomfort, conflict, and disagreement. It's a beautifully curated, fluffy echo chamber to avoid having a minge down over facts. The right weaponize truth and use it to shut down the entertainment of any other argument because they're said to be objectively wrong. You see this with something like Truth Social. This tension between my truth and the truth means we're operating in fundamentally different realities where people think 1 + 1 = 2 and others think it equals 3. And I don't know whose beliefs equate to the latter. And that's the point. We can never truly know. But the closest we can get is by analysing the empirical reality laid out in front of us with an open mind and heart. Further blockades to a flourishing society exist too. The lazy implementation of far right in every New York Times headline and far left in every Fox News headline is pathetic. And again, don't look at the groups, look at the individuals. You guys are fucking pussies. You're lazy, you lack any creativity, you lack any value. All you have left is SEO optimization via total societal polarization. You incompetent troglodytes. Get a real job. Get a job that you would smear because it doesn't require a degree that you so proudly racked up loads of debt to acquire, just to fart out mind-numbing horseshit to keep your boss happy. The self-evident truths of the past have been eroded by these retards. The devastation of World War II, the Soviet Union and Mao's China is dying with the generations that lived through these events. And we have to keep these in the pulse of our society for risk of repeating the same mistakes again. Go out on your campus, debate people, disagree with them, and do it because you care about understanding why they hold their ideas. And remember, when people stop talking, that's when violence happens. You start to think the other side is so evil, and they lose their humanity.